Hey, I'm Jonathan Wild, and we are going to cover how to use the aging of receivables method. The aging of receivables method is kind of like the percent of receivables method, but it uses many different percentages instead of just using one to estimate the allowance for doubtful accounts. Under aging of receivables, each accounts receivable is categorized by how long it is past its due date. The longer an amount is past due, the more likely it is to be uncollectible. So we assign a higher percent uncollectible. Let's go through an example together. Assume we have 4 customers who have accounts receivable with us at the end of the year, and their balances are classified by how many days past due. For receivables not past due, we use 1% as our estimate. For 1 to 30 days, we use 6%. For 31 to 60 days, 20%. For 61 to 90 days, 30%. And for over 90 days, 48%. Now to estimate our allowances, we take total receivables not past due of $70,000 and multiply it by our estimate of 1% to get $700. For 1 to 30 days past due, we take $20,000 and multiply it by 6% to get $1,200. 31 to 60 days past due is $8,500 multiplied by 20% to get $1,700. 61 to 90 days is $1,000 multiplied by 30% to get $300. And over 90 days past due is $500 multiplied by 48% to get $240. If we add each of these numbers up, we get $4,140 as an estimate for our allowance for doubtful accounts. Now, like with the percent of receivables method, the $4,140 is the balance we want to have in the allowance for doubtful accounts after an adjusting entry. So let's say before the adjusting entry, we have an unadjusted credit balance of $100 in our allowance for doubtful accounts. Therefore, to get from a $100 credit balance to a $4,140 credit balance, we need an adjusting entry with a credit of $4,040 to the allowance for doubtful accounts. To record the entry, we debit bad debts expense for $4,040 and credit allowance for doubtful accounts for $4,040. The debit to bad debts expense increases expenses, and the credit to the allowance increases the allowance for doubtful accounts. Now let's run through a scenario in which the unadjusted balance is a debit balance. So let's say before any adjusting entry, we have an unadjusted debit balance of $300 in our allowance for doubtful accounts. However, we just estimated we should have a $4,140 credit balance. To get from a $300 debit balance to a $4,140 credit balance, we needed an adjusting entry with a credit of $4,440 to the allowance for doubtful accounts, which was computed by adding a $300 credit to remove the debit balance to the $4,140 desired credit balance. To record the entry, we debit bad debts expense for $4,440 and credit allowance for doubtful accounts for $4,440.